Hey y'all, cheers and welcome to Drifting Drams with the Turks. I'm Ethan Turk
I'm Katie.
and we love to travel. We tend to use it to experience other things, a lot of that being whiskey. And so we thought that we would leverage that in our channel. So today we are here to talk about Reservoir Distilling. They are in Richmond, Virginia. They've been around since '08, right, Kate?
Yeah, they've been around since '08. They use all Virginia things. Barrels are from Virginia, grain is from Virginia. They started very, very small, doing 5-gallon barrels. Now they're using more 10 and 53-gallon barrels. Um, and that's kind of where they are today.
Yeah. So we were lucky enough to talk to, but then also one of the distillers for a little while when we were there this past week, and they were talking about a lot of things pretty standard. One thing that's really interesting about Reservoir is they do an alligator char on everything that they do, but they still release a lot of younger whiskey. Um, for us, we thought that would be kind of a turnoff for us. We thought it would be kind of grain forward and a little bit more aggressive. Some distilleries are, right, but we didn't really find that with Reservoir thing.
They are starting to experiment more. So they're finishing some of their whiskey in milk stout barrels. They're actually distilling mead and distilling beer as well. Not calling it a whiskey. The mead is more like a Vodrakis. But then they also have a cognac finish right now, which was phenomenal. But the wine finishes really shined for us while we were there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so that's a good call out too, right? So they do unique finishes throughout the year. They have various versions of their finishes as well. And so, for example, their Maison series, they have, I think this is the fourth edition of it. And if you go to the distillery again, you can actually taste. You can do a flight of all the different maisons, and you can taste 2, 3, and 4 as of now. So in front of us, we have two bottles. We have their wheated rye whiskey, which was a really interesting thing for us, right? I've never had a wheated rye whiskey, as far as I know, at least. And then their standard, what they call their founding rye. So the founding rye is a small batch rye. They say it's at least 2 years. It's they don't purely made from Virginia rye, which, if you don't know, Virginia rye used to be a very big thing in the old days. Virginia rye and Maryland rye were the kind of the gold standard of rye, and so yeah, they're bringing back Virginia rye, and I guess they've brought it back. It's been 14 years now. It's a very good whiskey, but I think the real surprise for us was this wheated rye. So that's what we both have in our glass here. So what's your impression, Kate?
My impression is it's very rye forward. There's a heavy spice on the nose, but then you get the sweetness of the wheat. Uh, Interesting one about this one, it was aged in 5-gallon barrels for 3.5 years. So you get a nice dark color. Unlike if it would be in a 53-gallon barrel for 3 years, it would be still relatively light in color. Um, but yeah, the nose is definitely spice. I almost get a licorice on it, and then the sweetness really comes forward with from the wheat in it. Uh,
Yeah, for me, I get like a really deep, like a molasses sweetness up front. It's a note that makes me think of molasses, but it's not sweet. It's really interesting. It's like a burnt sugar, super super caramelized. So much so that all the actual sweetness is gone, which sounds strange, I know, but yeah, I agree. The rye is just really nice up front. It you definitely get some grain note because again, it's only 3.5 years. Like Katie said, you get the 5-gallon barrel aspect of it, and the color and the wood influence, but it's not quite old enough to overcome that grain aspect altogether, which I think is actually it's a good thing here. I think it's a good thing in rye in general because it just lends itself to that spiciness. Um, and then in this one, the wheat really kind of throws me for a loop. I get that nice fruity nose at the end. It's I don't know if I were to do this blind if I'd have any idea what this actually was.
it is very unique. After tasting it, I get what Ethan is saying with the burnt molasses. It is very dark, caramelized. Like it is very good as far as sweetness level goes. So the sweetness is kind of toned down then over the nose, just smelling sugar off of it, almost like a confectionery says sugar the second time around.
Yep.
But that first sip was pure, like burnt molasses, burnt sugar. Just super unique.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's almost got like a baked good kind of doughiness and graininess to it. I think that's why the grain is not offensive. I think it's because it lends itself to kind of this overall flavor profile that it's got going on. And actually, again, it becomes more of an asset than anything for this whiskey.
And the grain really does shine forward. It lets you see what the growers were doing, the farms that are raising these grains really are doing with the rye. In my opinion, it doesn't have that overwhelming youthful note to it.
Yeah. And then the other glass here is it's their founding rye. So this is their typical small batch rye, right? One of their flagships. They call it their founding rye. I guess that's what the rye they started the distillery with, and so it's their way to avoid saying flagship or having to come up with a more creative name, maybe. Um,
And they did have some other founding, obviously, whiskeys there. They had a founding bourbon, a founding wheated whiskey as well. The rye just kind of stuck out to us. When we tried it, it was a good overall just rye. You could mix with it, you could sip it, you could put an ice cube in it, whatever you want to do with it, really.
yeah, for me, the nose on this is it's cream. It's just man, it's like it's like a not a buttercream frosting. It's like the vanilla frosting you get from the store. Um, it's not as heavy vanilla, right? But it still smells like icing you'd get on a cake when you were a kid.
Yeah, that
Um,
yellow cake with the white icing.
yep,
Oh, yeah,
yep,
definitely.
exactly. Just really well rounded on the nose. Not overly complex. You're not talking about a 20-year bottle of rye. But for a younger rye, this is incredibly put together on the nose.
Well, and it doesn't have that dill. Like, it's very unique in the fact that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have a dill note to it. And it really doesn't even have a mint
Mm-mm.
note to it, too.
Mm-mm.
Which typically what we get in ryes that we enjoy is more the mint, that spearmint. And for us to find one that doesn't have that, that we really enjoy, is kind of cool. Kind of cool.
I do think after the first sip, I am getting a little bit of a mint note, but I'm really having to look for it.
But as far as this one, is this one 100% like rye, no corn, no wheat, nothing in it? I'm pretty sure it is 100%.
Um,
Guy.
I think you're right, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that.
Yep. Another thing that we didn't mention about this that we really liked, it's the reason we walked away with two ryes, because that wasn't the intent.
Never is.
Their founding rye is bottled at 100 proof. It shows in the whiskey. It's definitely doesn't drink hot, but it brings more to bear.
It has more of those flavors that you were describing with the vanilla and the frosting,
Mhm.
and like really searching for that mint. It you pull it out at the end, not even mid palate. It's a subtle, nice, just like hey, I'm a rye. That's what you get on it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, this one, it opens up as just sweetness, which again, it's kind of a contradiction for me in a rye. Normally, I don't get that much sweetness off of them, but this one does. It's pure sweetness up front. I mean, that hug is still going.
Oh yeah,
And then it kind of moves into that rye spice, and then it transitions into that rye grain baked good note. And the whole time that 100 proof is just kind of lingering, and it coats your mouth pretty well, especially for only being 100 proof, and it just sticks around. It's like it's just now dissipating, and not in an aggressive way, but just in a good hug way, right?
Yeah, I'm very happy that we walked away with 2 Ryes. One other thing, Ethan and I both did a flight while we were there. We did 2 flights actually.
Mm-hmm.
He did a bottled and bond flight, which was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely wonderful. And it allowed you to try their whiskey at a little bit older of an age. The distiller that we talked to then, he was telling us that they are going to come out with older age stated whiskey, but it's still further off from
Mm-hmm.
what they're trying to release. They're just trying to keep up with demand. I think he was saying on average they do about 10 to 12 barrels a week. And they're quickly running out of room to lay it all down, but they are doing that. Um, I did a finished flight, which included one of the milk stouts finished, which was called the Milkman. Ethan did one that was called the Rum Runner, and it was a rum finished, and then, of course, the Maison, which I'm sure we'll talk about in another video just because it is unique.
Yeah.
It's more unique than any other wine finish I've had. You can really taste the earth on it. But yeah, overall, just a really cool distillery. If you're ever in the Richmond area, you should check it out. They are open for tastings, but my pro would be is that they're not afraid to experiment with all their
Mm-hmm.
finishes. That's something that I look for in a distillery. I do enjoy finished whiskeys to end the night, so having that milk stout finished, having the wine finish, rum finish, cognac finish, it allows you to have a finish for every
Mm-hmm.
type of person that enjoys a finished whiskey.
So for me, a clear con is distribution. They're not
Mm.
widely distributed. I don't know where all they're available, but I know the distillery itself cannot ship outside of Virginia. Um, and the only place that I've ever seen their whiskey is in Virginia. So leads me to believe they're only in Virginia, or at least in very few states. So I know a lot of people probably won't be able to see these whiskeys unless they go to Virginia. They do have a really cool space. It's a very industrial production space. At the front of it, they've turned into a tasting room place to go. You can see them distilling in back. Like in our case, the distiller walked up front, and so he was talking with us and really just kind of sharing some of the process and kind of what he liked and what he didn't.
All while the hammer mill was going in the back and you could see the
Exactly.
corn just
Yep.
shooting out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching us. And, you know,
So yeah, I think with that we'll wrap it up. We appreciate y'all joining us, and cheers.
cheers.